Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. Chelsea start the season with a 3-2 win at Fulham. They were great fun going forward. João Pedro after a minute, Morgan Rogers opening his account, and a lot of should Cole Palmer have been on that plane vibes, and then quite a lot of Robert Sanchez is still there. Fulham looked bright and had two brilliant chances to equalise. There's some enormous transfer news for the pod to digest. And then to the EFL. Favourites for the Championship, West Ham, have started terribly. The London Stadium boos sound good in the Football League too. Favourites for League One, Leicester, have started terribly, beaten at home by Burton at the weekend. And favourites for League Two, Salford, have started terribly, 2 defeats in a row. No one knows anything. There's also goal of the season wrapped up, an Adebayor celebration, retrospective VAR, and a Dion Dublin / Robbie Keane hide and diddle the keeper goal. One of you's done the work on the Premier League players with all the vowels in their name. There's your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Jacob Steinberg.
Hello.
And from Not the Top 20, George Elek. Hey, George.
Hello.
Let's start at Craven Cottage. Fulham 2, Chelsea 3 on Monday Night Football. Jacob, you were there. Did you have a nice time?
I did have a nice time. You always have a nice time at Fulham. Lovely walk through the park. And it was a very good game, very entertaining game. Start of the Xabi Alonso era. And, you know, the first thing that you probably come away with from it is that it was significantly better than most of the rubbish we watched with Chelsea last season. One of the big positives was that they were the team, the stats show, who ran the most in the Premier League this weekend, and that might seem like it's nothing, but actually they were outrun last season in pretty much every game. So you can see an early sign there of what Alonso's been doing in the summer to get this team fitter and more committed, because that was a real issue last season. Another big thing is that they did this without Moises Caicedo, who's obviously such a big part of the midfield, and also Marco Palestra, who was out last night, and this new Italian wing-back from Atalanta, who has looked really, really good in pre-season, very fast. And then the big thing is that the front three was a lot of fun, and you imagine it's going to cause a lot of damage this season. You know, João Pedro being in brilliant form in pre-season, again, that finish and then the assist for Palmer for the third goal makes you look at him and just think, how was he not in that squad for the World Cup with Brazil? Morgan Rogers, probably, although he scored on his debut, probably the less eye-catching performance of the three of them, but I think you saw a lot of the kind of off-the-work ball and connectivity that he brings to the performance as well in that kind of left side number 10. And then Cole Palmer was back, and that's just a huge thing for Chelsea. I mean, when he's flowing, they really are a very good side. And obviously last season was so difficult for him with the injuries. It was just never there for him. That was his first assist last night, beyond the goal. That was his first assist in the league since February, which is crazy when you think of the type of player he is. But he just looked free, fluid, so silky, so clever on the ball. And when he's playing like that, he's just one of the best attackers in the league. And you know, the goal was brilliant. He kind of gives Leno the eyes, makes it look like he's going to pass it back into the middle and then just rolls it through his legs. It's so cheeky. It's so Cole Palmer. And that's all brilliant. And they look like they can score at will when they're going forward. And then there's the other side of it, which is just silly decisions at times, lack of game management. They still sort of invite the pressure by getting, you know, these stupid bookings early on, Lavia and Colwell through poor decisions. And they let in some silly goals. And ultimately, you know, when you're coming down to whether or not this team can challenge for the title, whether this could be the team who push Arsenal with the lack of European football, you just come back to the goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez. And it's not just the first goal with Josh King. It's also things like just the panic that he transmits through letting that back pass from Josh Acheampong run until it's out for a corner. It just makes the defence nervy, I think. And the second goal, I think, as well, is something that comes back to him. So this is Sanchez's 4th season as Chelsea's number one, and it just feels like he's been an issue for all of that period, and it's something that they're going to need to fix. Whether that's Mike Penders, who's this Belgian goalkeeper, young keeper who they've got a lot of high hopes for, or whether it's someone else coming in before the end of the season, before the end of the window, I'm not sure. But it feels like he is the big block between whether or not they could just be a top 4 contender or maybe challenge for the title.
Yeah, producer Joel saying Mike Penders does sound like the congressman for Delaware, doesn't he? You know, did Joe Biden win the election? Joe Biden was sworn in as president. Come on, Mike, answer the question. Look, we'll get to Robert Sanchez in a sec. I just wondered, George, because obviously you did loads of stuff during the World Cup for England. And you were careful, as I think we were, not to just be like, well, who isn't? Let's not talk about the players who aren't there, but when Cole Palmer was waltzing through the Fulham defence, you know, on that little run where he dribbled around everyone, were you thinking, oh, I reckon he could have unpicked Argentina a bit?
Yeah, it took me about 5 minutes to put on the England Pod WhatsApp group.
I want to take back everything that I said around the squad announcement, and he probably should have been there. The irony about it is that we were told by Tuchel on many occasions that he really wanted his wide players to hold the width. And he looked at the team when it came out yesterday, and it looked on paper like it would be Palmer and Rodgers basically playing as 2 10s behind João Pedro. But in reality, Palmer played pretty wide. Like, he went on the outside loads, obviously took up space inside too, but it almost felt like he wanted to prove that he can also be that kind of wide player. Like, he can take on fullbacks consistently. He can use his pace to get past players. He can be the kind of wide player that Tuchel seemingly wants to play alongside Kane. The other thing to note is that after, as he said in his post-match interview, last season for him was very tough with injuries. And there's probably a degree where a guy who's played a lot of football in the last 3 or 4 years of his career, after an injury hit campaign, having a summer off, it's probably no coincidence that he looked incredibly sharp, and especially after a weekend where quite a lot of England players and quite a lot of players who played in the World Cup haven't looked particularly sharp and have been cramping up and have been looking a bit off the pace. The fact that he comes into it having had a bit of a break might have played into that good performance. But yes, I'd be surprised if it's only a month until England play Spain at Wembley in a 4-game international break. I think it's going to catch a few people out by surprise. It would be a surprise if Palmer's playing like this and he's not in that squad.
Yeah. Actually, that front three, Barry, Chelsea, I'm trying to think, is it Drogba was the last real number 9 that was like really prolific? You think with Rodgers and Palmer behind Pedro, like that Pedro could have an amazing. It's a really fun front three.
He could, and it's difficult to think of a more exciting front three in the Premier League. Just on the Palmer thing, I think whether it was injuries, maybe a bit of complacency or fatigue after not having a summer off for 2 years, I don't think Cole Palmer deserved his place in the England squad on the strength of his performances last season. So I would put his brilliant performance last night, and maybe being left out was the wake up call he needed, and it seems to have worked. But I do agree that the rest this summer has probably done him good. While I think João Pedro has every right to feel aggrieved at not being in the Brazil squad, I don't think Cole Palmer deserved a spot in that England squad.
Yeah, you might be right. But just on Sanchez, because we've talked about it a lot, it does seem insane that you can spend so much money and still, as Jacob says, have a keeper that just engenders panic through the whole team. It's just not what you want from a goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's nuts. I can't understand why Chelsea didn't go in for James Trafford. And I believe they tried to sign him last summer, but he was available this summer. They didn't sign him. He's gone to Leeds. He seems like the obvious candidate to bring in. I don't think Chelsea will be able to challenge for the title with Robert Sanchez in goal. Like, he was at fault for both goals and generally engendered panic. And then he could have been at fault for a potential equaliser when that ball was played through to Anthony Robinson and he tried to lift it over him and put it well wide. You think maybe a striker might have scored from there. It was a really good chance to equalise, and Sanchez had wandered out into the middle of his area to make it easier for Robinson, who wasn't able to convert the chance. So I don't know much about Penders. I know he was on loan at Strasbourg last season and he played for them all the way. He was their cup goalkeeper, basically. Played to the semi-finals of the Conference League and the French Cup. But it does seem baffling that they haven't got an upgrade on Sanchez.
Yeah, Jacob, have you asked anyone why? Or has anyone asked? Or what's the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, they've got this head of goalkeeping, Ben Roberts, who came from Brighton and obviously has a long-standing relationship with Robert Sanchez, who, like many players for Chelsea have signed, comes from Brighton. And from what I've heard, speaking to someone about it about a year ago or so, maybe before the Club World Cup, was that they felt that Sanchez could do a lot of the things that at the time, when Maresca was in charge, that he could do a lot of the things technically that Maresca wanted him to do. He was as good as anybody, maybe technically, but perhaps there's just that mental element at times with goalkeepers that prevents them some of them at the highest level are being able to perform as maybe they're being seen to do on the training ground. I mean, there's a lot of Chelsea players, I think, who thought that, for example, Philip Jorgensen was actually a really, really good goalkeeper, potentially elite, but when it came to that moment when Rossinha put him in against PSG last season in the Champions League, he just couldn't handle it and he froze, and it was a disaster, and they ended up losing the game 5-2. If you go back through most title-winning sides of the Premier League, I think it's hard to pick any of them who don't have a great goalkeeper. And I think if you look at Chelsea are the best example of that. They've gone from Cech to Courtois and then through to Kepa, and ever since that moment they've basically not challenged for the title. And you take maybe Manchester United in the post Schmeichel era, they had good goalkeepers, but goalkeepers who were not quite at that elite level, who would just make those little mistakes that would just cause them not to be able to carry out the challenges to the full. And ultimately, you look at Arsenal, the ruthless decision that they made with Aaron Ramsdale a couple of years ago, where most people thought he's perfectly fine as Arsenal's number one, and Arteta, who's just absolutely ruthless, sees something that's not quite right and goes for David Raya. And do they win the league without him as the goalkeeper last season, David Raya? I'd say, given the massive saves that he makes in key moments, probably not. And that's probably just this crunch point now that Chelsea are coming to with this position.
George, what did you make of Alvaro Arbeloa's Fulham?
I was pretty impressed. I think the way to go 1-0 down as early as they did and to still kind of come back twice, albeit thanks to two, certainly the positioning of Sánchez for the first goal was ridiculous. In a Premier League game, for a player to be able to not even put it that far in the near post and still be able to score. But the way, they dominated the ball for the most part of the game. So I think we got an insight there. Obviously, game state plays a big part when you're 1-0 down within a minute. But even so, it suggests we're going to see a possession-heavy style of play. And even though there were times in the game where Chelsea looked like they were a cut above for the last, 25 minutes, it kind of felt like a goal was probably coming for Fulham. And it was only the best chance of the game came again with Sánchez. Just extraordinary decision-making and positioning when there was a clip ball over the top, which Anthony Robinson ran in onto off the left-hand side, and Sánchez, committed to coming and then just stopped basically before he got anywhere near it, and then just kind of stood his ground. And Robinson had the whole goal to lob into, but it was on his weaker foot, and he put it wide. So yeah, I think you'd probably come away from that game thinking Chelsea showed in flashes what they're capable of, but also Fulham certainly. A lot of people I think have seen when you see a manager like Marco Silva leave, who's been at a club for a long time and has done very well, and an untested manager come in, you kind of chalk them down for maybe a regression. But no, I thought yesterday they gave a good account of themselves. Yeah,
I don't know what you think, Baz. I really liked Garcia, I like Palacios. Josh King, we know, is brilliant. I think they'll be fine and maybe better than that.
Yeah, they were impressive. Josh King was the standout player. We know how good he is. He was in that England warm-up squad ahead of the World Cup. And it seems like it'll only be a matter of time before he gets handed a debut by Thomas Tuchel. I wasn't sure what to expect from Arbeloa as Fulham manager. He had his time at Real Madrid, which I think everyone gets a pass for not doing particularly well at Real Madrid these days. But that they certainly won't get relegated on the strength of that performance, but we'll see how they get on. Before we move on, could I ask Jacob, do you know what's going on with is Liam Delap going to Nottingham Forest, and is Mykhailo Mudryk going to Leeds, who I believe expressed an interest in taking him on loan?
Yeah, Delap probably going to Forest, obviously been well away from the Chelsea first team training now. And Mudryk, I don't think he'll go to Leeds on loan. He could end up at Strasbourg on loan, obviously Chelsea partner club, and there are some other interests, and obviously there's quite a lot for them to get done before the window shuts. It's about 15 players maybe who could go, and the big one beyond Enzo Fernandez would be Jackson to Aston Villa.
All right. And is the Enzo, what's the latest on that?
just rumbling on and on and on. I think, you're getting some. I think you're seeing some quite strong pushes from the Manchester City side, or maybe the Enzo Maresca side, and obviously that sort of slightly odd deadline passed a couple of weeks ago now. But I think he'll be a Manchester City player. If Chelsea can get the player as well that they do keep saying they need a replacement. There's a massive interest in Alex Scott, but Bournemouth are totally adamant that he's not going this window, and they also like Adam Morton, but I think it's a similar story with Crystal Palace there. So it's not going to be easy for them to replace Fernandes if he does go. But I don't know. Looking at him at the end last night, it felt a little bit like a farewell. And should also say as well that that he got such a bad reception from the Fulham fans. Obviously, given the everything around England at the World Cup, he was very much the villain there. And we didn't see Barco, so we'll have to wait to see what kind of reception he gets.
Yeah. And it'd be good if someone bought Paredes just to, why not? Just chuck them all in. Before we move on from the Premier League, Barry, you sent a WhatsApp message with 6 klaxon emojis, and there isn't a number of klaxon emojis that would do this piece of transfer news justice.
Yes, this is not a drill. David Ornstein reported last night that Ethan Pinnock looks to be on his way to Coventry City, subject to a medical from Brentford. I have to take my hat off to Ethan Pinnock's agent here. He's 33, but looks like he's going to get a 3-year deal with Coventry City with an option for another year. £5 million fee with £1 million add-ons. And yeah, I think if he leaves Brentford, which looks almost certain to happen, I would imagine he'll leave with the very best wishes of Brentford fans as a bona fide club legend. And he's one of those players who has started non-league, played for Dulwich Hamlet, then Forest Green in the National League, then went to Barnsley, and then Brentford, and was instrumental and almost ever present in helping Brentford get to the Premier League and establish them as a Premier League side. So he hasn't really got much of a look in under Keith Andrews. So I don't know if he'll start for Coventry or not, but his experience will be invaluable, you'd imagine, in the dressing room.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention his goals. So, and
well, yes.
the absolute key.
That goal, that far post tap-in that was cruelly overlooked for goal of the season against, was it Liverpool?
Absolutely no idea.
Some years ago, yeah.
Anyway, good luck, Ethan. And that'll do for part 1. Part 2, we'll look back at the opening couple of weekends in the Championship. Well, because part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly live shows are very close then. 1st of September, we're at Vicar Street in Dublin. Me, Barry, John Bruin and Jonathan Wilson. A few tickets still available. Then on the 9th of September, we're live at the Soho Theatre in Walthamstow. Lineup to be announced soon, even though I Instagrammed the lineup and then producer Joel said, we haven't confirmed those people are coming. So maybe he'll have to let some people down. But anyway, we will announce that soon. And that London show as well is live streamed. So you can watch it wherever you are on earth, guardian.co.uk/Football Weekly Live. Come along, please. Okay, then let's do the Championship. Should we start with West Ham, Jacob? As you said in the WhatsApp group, you're not interested in West Ham. We're thinking of someone else, but you were lucky to get a 2-2 against Burnley in the opening day, even though you were 2-0 up, and then losing 2-1 at home to Charlton on Saturday in front of a sold-out London stadium. It's an inauspicious beginning in the Championship.
Yeah, they very quickly managed to suck the positivity out, because it was very briefly, it looked like it might be, there was some goodwill around it. They sold 50,000 season tickets, which is quite remarkable given they've got relegated, and the sense that the show was no longer going to be run by David Sullivan as well, after everything that happened during the summer and last season on the football side, I think had people feeling mildly optimistic, and then it's just kind of that feeling has just slowly ebbed away. The ownership situation remains a bit of a mess with the uncertainty over whether it will be Daniel Kretinsky taking over and getting those shares from the Gold family, or this curveball coming from Amanda Staveley, who's got this deal lined up to buy all of them from Vanessa Gold, which has just delayed the whole process, and I think has made the window for them harder. I don't think many people are particularly delighted that David Sullivan was again in the director's box at the Charlton game. Most fans, I think, judging by the reaction on social media, would rather that's not happening. And so there's just that sense of negativity that's been around the club for the last 2 or 3 years. It felt like it might have gone away. Instead it's come back. And then on the pitch, the team, there's so much was put into Jarrod Bowen staying, and would he just run amok in the Championship? Well, he's had the first 2 games so far, and he's not so far scored in either of them, and the rest of the team haven't really done much as well. Solomon's looked quite positive since joining from Tottenham, but they've still got these old failings. The defence is not good enough. The goalkeeper was pretty poor on that first Charlton goal. The overhead kick, Mavropanos makes a mistake for the second one. Kilman's still Kilman. They have managed to get rid of some players who needed to go, but there are players who sort of still hanging around there, and while they might be useful in the Championship, it seems like they don't want to necessarily turn out when there's still a chance for them to get out of there before the window shuts. And into that as well, I think there's quite a few fans who are starting to lose a bit of patience with Nuno. I think the Burnley game, where it was a recurring theme where they were ahead and then they sit back and invite the pressure and the late goal, which is something that happened quite a lot last season. And he is quite a reactive, pragmatic manager. That's always been kind of his style of football. And then there's this kind of question mark of what will Nuno do when he's got all the possession in the Championship. And on Saturday, the answer was not very much. I mean, I didn't see the game. I was just listening to it, and the commentators on TalkSport were pretty scathing just about how it looked like there were no patterns of play to West Ham, and how easy it sounded for Charlton. Obviously, they almost got away with it with that penalty, but Tati takes it over Bowen, which was quite surprising, misses it, which isn't surprising for Tati because he gets into loads of positions but misses loads of chances. So it's a pretty worrying start for them. I think this idea of them picking up 100 points and just waltzing back in suddenly looks to be on quite shaky ground already. It looks like it might be a pretty difficult season. I mean, play Southampton tonight in the Carabao Cup away, and that's not going to be easy. And they could do with getting a positive result there, and if not, just the pressure on Nuno is going to heighten. And you're already sort of starting to hear a few people sort of rumbling away about, well, Scott Parker is available, former West Ham player.
He knows how to get out of the Championship.
He does, doesn't necessarily know then what to do after that, but he might be a more popular choice than Nuno if this continues.
Sure. I mean, our producer Joel, who's a Charlton fan, said, that last minute was absolutely brilliant because they've been giving it to the West Ham fans, and then West Ham get a penalty, and then West Ham miss it. It's like the perfect way to win. Actually, what have you made of the start of them, George, and the other relegated sides?
Yeah, I mean, they've been poor. As you alluded to, it felt like they were 2-0 up against Burnley, but without really necessarily deserving to be. And Zian Fleming had a lot of chances before he scored the 2 goals to get them back into it. I think we spoke when I was on a month or so ago before the start of the season about what Jacob was saying there. Like, Nuno is not a manager who's had any success in his whole career by dominating possession. So why does it make sense to retain a manager who is going to have a lot of games like Saturday where they're going to face up to teams in a low block? Not even when they go ahead, but at 0-0, teams are going to set up to try and frustrate them and set off them because they know that the quality of the likes of Bowen and Peru and Solomon means that if you give them space to run into, they're going to exploit that space. So I'd be really surprised if Nuno is still there. As we've seen quite consistently, like, it's a long season. If West Ham continue to have a poor start and they have games coming up in, they play Wolves next Tuesday. They play Wrexham, they play Millwall, they play Watford, all and Derby, all by the end of by the middle of September. It's not an easy start to life in the Championship for them. So yeah, definitely concerns about them. But I'd be amazed if we're not talking in December or January about them improving under a manager who is better suited to this. And you mentioned Scott Parker there. It's never been more obvious that the job of getting out of the Championship and the job of staying in the Premier League are two completely different things. And we're not far away, I think, from clubs basically getting promoted and then sacking their manager immediately, because it's just a different job with different skill sets. And you look at Daniel Farke, and Régis Lebris, who are the two that have done it well recently, but Lebris went against the grain of the manager that normally gets promoted out of the Championship, because he is someone whose teams don't need the ball, and he was happy in the Championship to sit off teams. And then Farke, who's had, it's his third time that he's managed to do it. He nearly got sacked the third time, and then he's had to change his approach completely in order to stay there too. So yeah, with West Ham, it's a poor start for Burnley. I thought they were impressive against West Ham, but then they were beaten pretty comfortably on Sunday against a West Brom side who've started really well. They were assumed by many, including us, to be kind of the poorest of the three relegated teams, but they've still got a lot of very good players in their side, and they look like they might be better than they were written off to be. But Wolves are the ones who are probably the best of the relegated teams. They had to rely on a very late penalty against Blackburn on opening day for a 2-2 draw, but they were really good in beating Preston 3-1 on Saturday. They've just got there's a perception that West Ham are the team with the best players, but in Matheus Mane, in Fer Lopez, Andre, Wolves have a group of players that maybe are better suited to playing for a team that will dominate more. They're at a younger time in their career as well, where maybe dropping down when you're 18 like Mane, or I think Lopez is 22, where you can be part of a dominant side for their progression, could be beneficial to them. So they look like they could be the best of the three that have come down. But as was the case last season, after a period of football in the Championship where the teams that came down were just way better than most teams, and it was so hard for non-parachute payment teams to break in, early signs again suggest that this is a season where the likes of Middlesbrough or Millwall, absolutely could force their way into that top two. And with 8, the top 8 either getting promoted or getting the playoffs, with 3rd to 8th now getting in the playoffs, there's a lot to play for. So it looks open early on.
The observant viewers on YouTube will notice that the answer that George just gave began in one location and then finished in a separate location. I didn't notice, but there were some internet issues which we've saved you from.
Yes.
in the edit. But Barry, we need to talk about the Don Ballard back heel volley for Bristol City against Birmingham, wasn't it? It was an unbelievable goal.
I mean, it was an absolute brilliant backheel volley, as you say, just from distance. And I was doing clock watch for The Guardian and saw the name D. Ballard flash up as having scored this goal. when did Dan Ballard go to Bristol City? I missed that one, but Dominic Ballard, so not Dan. And yeah, just a wonderful goal, which I suspect may be on the short list for the Puskas Award.
Yeah,
there's an amazing reverse angle which suggests that rather than it being a back heel, I think he's almost kind of caressed it in with the outside of his right foot, but backwards, which I think makes it even more impressive because it's kind of more controlled than just timing it. I mean, it's an absolutely ridiculous goal. He won League One Player of the Season and League One Young Player of the Season last season, playing for the Leyton Orient team that only just stayed up. Bought for, I think, up to £5 million by Bristol City, and that's the first goal he scores for them. It's such a shame watching it back. And, this isn't because, before I get accused of being anti-Birmingham, but when you see a goal like that scored late in front of the away fans and you see the limbs, it's just a shame that then it wasn't actually the winner, because about 10 minutes later, in the 95th minute, Damari Gray scored a penalty to make it 1-1, to make it 2-2.
Yeah. George, someone was saying to me the other day that they think he'll end up, who watched Leyton Orient quite a lot, that they think he'll end up in the Premier League. I mean, how good is he?
Yeah, I mean, he's really good. He's a very interesting mix where he's kind of a diminutive poacher who also has the ability to do the exceptional. Like, he's also someone that scores goals from range. He's not just, I think it's quite hard these days to be a 5'8" striker who doesn't do anything outside the box, and he definitely has the ability and the quality to do more than that. So at a time where there aren't that many strikers, you're probably, anyone's probably one good championship season away from being courted by Premier League teams, and he's certainly got the ability. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. And they signed Laurent Tolai as well, who comes in from Plymouth Argyle, who's also a really talented striker, very different kind of profile, but also scores a lot of goals and a lot of good goals. So they're signing good young players, and they've spent, I think, £9 million on the two of them. So I'll be hoping for a return on that. But it wouldn't surprise me if both of them end up being Premier League strikers in time.
He played quite a lot for us a couple of years ago for Cambridge, and he did look quite good, but it's safe to say, I think in a relegation season, or like one where we just stayed up, we dragged him down to our level. And if Damari Gray had any honour, he'd have tried a back heel with the penalty. That's the only way it could have been fair in that game. Before we move on from the Championship, you wanted, George, to mention the Hegebo handball that we saw on the opening day when West Brom won at Norwich, and it hit his hand and he ran off celebrating, but he got a ban for 2 games afterwards, which sort of, when it happened, I was like, oh, fair enough. And then you think about it, I think it's a crazy decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unprecedented. And it really questions, again, where you draw the line for this stuff. Had the referee or the linesman seen it, it would have been a free kick. He probably would have got a yellow card, because I don't think it was necessarily deliberate enough or clearly deliberate enough to warrant a red card. But then because it hasn't been seen by the referee,
it wasn't reckless foul play. He didn't punch the ball hard that he knocked him out.
And I also wondered, and a lot of people say, well, he celebrated. And it's like, what? So you're banning him because he didn't turn around to the referee and say, sorry, that hit my hand. In the same way, like yesterday in the Chelsea-Fulham game, when Calvin Bassey dived and immediately tried to turn around and tell the referee that he hadn't been touched, do you therefore expunge the dive? Like, it's not how things work. So it opens up, we saw the Norwich manager Philippe Clement list 81 leagues where VAR is in use at the moment. I think I can speak for pretty much all fans of the EFL saying, Philippe, please be quiet. We do not want VAR in our leagues. Thank you very much. Even if you as a manager, I understand that you would, because it can be frustrating if your job is on the line, which his isn't. But, I can understand why if you're a manager and you want things to be as fair as possible, because to protect your livelihood and what you're doing. But it seems like a strange decision. I mean, it didn't impact West Brom, or if anything, it seems to have kind of created a bit of a siege mentality for them to go and win the game on Sunday. He'll be back relatively soon, 2-match ban. But it just, apart from Norwich fans, it doesn't seem like there are many people who think that we want to see retrospective bans for instances like that.
Yeah, although slightly ASMR, Philippe Clement reading out 81 countries. It's a quite impressive thing to just, hold a room, like halfway through. I remember once during COVID, I think it was me and Barry on the radio, because there was no sport, we did the British Open by drawing out all the golfers, and the last one out of the hat would win the Open, right? It's about 85 golfers. And we had the golf theme, but like about halfway through, I think both of us thought, I'm not sure we should have done. This feels like dead air to me. And
who won?
We've been guilty of it. I think Graham McDowell won, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
Yeah, the COVID British Open. And it is worth
mentioning.
Carry on.
On the back of that, Philippe Clement press conference listing all the leagues with VAR, on TalkSport, Adrian Durham said he should immediately be sacked because he tasked an analyst with researching all the leagues with VAR, and then Adrian Durham said, well, he would have been better off tasking his analyst with trying to figure out how Millwall would play against them, because they went to the Den and lost 3-0.
But it is, I mean, I know it's sad to have a VAR debate when we're talking about the EFL, when it's spoken about enough when it comes to the Premier League. But I do always think it's the most damning indictment of VAR that you have 3 leagues where the quality of officiating is one of the biggest gripes amongst fans consistently. If you talk to any fans of League One and League Two clubs in particular, they moan about the quality of the refs basically every weekend. And it's so common, when I go to Oxford games, every time we go, we seem to come away and the home fans think the ref was terrible and the away fans think the ref was terrible. And yet, even with VAR existing in the Premier League, there is next to no support for it to be introduced within the EFL. So even though there is a problem that has been identified, the only solution that is out there and is being used elsewhere, doesn't even get a mention, which goes a long way to show.
I have said before, you could just bring it in the EFL, but just for clear and obvious decisions, and then it would be absolutely fine. There'd be absolutely no problems
Heard that one
with
before.
it whatsoever. Yeah. Anyway, I probably said it to you a month ago. The first time I've ever repeated a joke. My apologies. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. We'll rattle through League One and League Two in just a second. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So in League One, only Bradford City have won their first 2 games. I mean, the big story, George, is Leicester City under Russell Martin.
Yeah, it's been a really, really poor start, which I guess surprises some because of the size of the club and the perception they shouldn't have been down there in the first place. But the squad looks pretty thin. Like, yes, there are players within their team that shouldn't be playing League One football. One of them was sent off on Saturday, Oliver Skipp. There was a story early in the summer that Middlesbrough asked Leicester how much it would cost to buy Oliver Skipp, and they replied saying 15 million. And you wonder if they regret now putting that 1 in front of the 5, because that seems an extortionate price for a player. But they've got only 2 centre-backs in Harry Souttar and in Caleb Okoli, because Wout Faes basically has no interest in playing League One football, which is not a huge surprise. If you look through their starting team in the 2-1 defeat against Burton on Saturday, they've got loads of young players. That's Will Alves, Sammy Braybrook, who's a brilliant centre midfielder who's 22, who's had some great loans. Right back, Aluko. Like it's not a team that is like a standout League One side in terms of pure quality. And then in Russell Martin, you've got a manager whose stock is plummeting off the back of that poor Premier League season with Southampton and then the time at Rangers. And it feels like this Leicester job is starting in a similar way to the Rangers one, where quickly any goodwill that was built over the summer is going. The boos, unsurprisingly, against Burton Albion were obvious. They've been caught out playing out from the back quite a lot. Like Russell Martin said in his post-match interview after the Burton defeat, where they were down to 10 men. And he said, it's rare to see a team dominate in the second half with 10 men like we did. And you watched the second half and they dominated the ball. Sure, and that is quite unlikely when you got 10 men, but you're also Leicester playing against Burton at home and you're 2-1 down. So again, the way the game is set up means you're probably going to dominate the ball, but they barely created anything. And if I was a Leicester fan, I'd find it pretty concerning to hear my manager talking about dominance when you're not actually creating any chances to score goals. So, I've got real concerns about them. They were pre-season favourites with the bookmakers to win the league, but they were one of those last season in the Championship, despite the points deduction, and got relegated. And unless they can find a way to kind of switch on, they've signed players like Connor Chaplin and Wes Burns, who were once upon a time brilliant League One players, but we've seen certainly in the past with Ipswich and with Sunderland that using your clout in League One to go out and sign Championship players, who are Championship players but probably aren't really wanted by the Championship clubs at that time and whose career are on the slide for quite a lot of money, is a terrible way to recruit. You need to go out and sign players who are performing at that level. So I've got real concerns about them right now. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all if they, this isn't just a bad start. Like they could be a team that could feasibly find themselves in trouble this season.
I find it interesting that Wout Faes considers League One football beneath him, because I think a large part of the reason Leicester City are in League One is very much on the shoulders of Wout Faes. I note their owners have put the whole kit and caboodle up for sale: stadium, training ground, men's team, women's
200
team.
million.
224 million pounds.
Absolutely
But
ridiculous.
apparently it's debt-free, and they've made this glossy brochure to give to prospective buyers.
Do they pop it in your letterbox?
No, I'm not. I keep getting a glossy brochure from a retirement home in Clapham put through my letterbox, and it's like it's not junk mail. It's direct addressed to me personally.
Right.
So every couple of months, there's this, Green Acres, whatever, I don't know what it's called, but a retirement village in Clapham.
Are you tempted? Today
I
is
am a
Tuesday.
bit, I won't lie, yeah.
The next meal is lunch. What a life.
Yeah.
Bingo at 4. Could be an absolute dream, couldn't it? You could still do this.
It would be more within my budget than the 224 million for Leicester. But, I mean, Leicester do have one of the best training grounds in Europe, if not the world. King Power is a good stadium. Obviously the team is shite. And you get their sister club, the Belgian outfit, Louvren, thrown in as well. So
right.
maybe it's not that bad.
And if that's not enough, we'll throw in this too. In League Two, George, Salford have Lost 2 from 2. You had them top. They're never going to go up. We know this.
Yeah, I'm annoyed that we had them top of our 124s. I mean, it's basically just because they're just signing players that are way too good for League Two, who've proven it. And it was funny, they signed a winger in Molineux and a striker in Langstaff, and then they conceded 3 goals against Barnet on opening day, so they go out and sign Brandon Wiredu from Plymouth Argyle, who is a player that can play holding midfield or centre-back. And Argyle are one of the better teams in League One, you think, this season, and they don't want to lose him, and their fans are upset to lose him, but he's dropping to League Two. Peter Klimowski, who was Ange Postecoglou's very close friend and his assistant previously, who spoke in the summer saying that his football would be, was it in tribute to Postecoglou or would be in his image, and maybe that doesn't work at League Two level, even in August when the pitches are okay. So let's see what it looks like in February and March when that changes. But they've been really poor. Like, they went 1-0 down at home to Chesterfield on Saturday after 2 minutes, and they hit the woodwork a couple of times from set pieces, but their open chance creation was like horrendous. And this is an ownership group now. It's moved on a little bit from the initial cluttered 92 ownership with Gary Neville and David Beckham more involved, but with a new group of investors. And since that new group of investors came in last summer, it feels like the spend and the ambition has gone up, which is why Kyle Robinson lost his job, because promotion was the aim last season. And even though they came as close as they possibly could do by losing the playoff final, that still wasn't enough. I wonder how long Klimowski's got to show that he's the man to do this, because there's no way, given the money they're spending, that they'll accept the kind of start that they've made.
Some real highlights in League Two. Josh Marsh scoring for Crewe using a hiding behind the post from the keeper. I mean, you can only do it at your end, can't you, when your fans are behind the goal, because otherwise everyone's like, no, nipping into score. Bobby Camwer doing an Adebayor, running the full length of the pitch, scoring for Bristol Rovers against Newport, which is always, because once again, a bit like doing the COVID British Open, like halfway down the pitch, you think, I've got to keep doing this, but he really does. But I didn't see this, George. The Tranmere Rovers centre-back, Bobby Faulkner, playing 40 minutes in goal against poor outfield player in goal is absolute peak football.
Yeah, and made some saves as well. It wasn't, I mean, the saves weren't...
they look like centre-back saves.
They look like a centre-back in goal, but they were still effective. Came out and did a nice punch at one point as well. And they also equalised whilst he was in goal, which is great. So... he's a young player who's come in this summer who's amazing. He had an unbelievable debut playing centre-back, and then he's gone in goal for the second game and kept his own clean sheet in a 1-1 draw away from home against a recently relegated side. It's been a good weekend for strange stuff happening in League Two. I love the Canberra celebration. Like, I think if he said before the game that if he would react to how the Newport fans reacted, where if they showed him a bit of love, he'd show them a bit of love, and if they booed him, he'd give it back. And they booed him, so he gave it back. Fair play.
But he scored the goal that kept them up last season on the last day.
Having also missed a penalty that nearly sent them down as well.
I'm not sure why he was getting abuse, but it was good. And he got taken off straight away by Steve Evans, so he didn't have to worry about the fatigue.
No, or getting two-footed, but hopefully he walked right around the pitch, just applauding everyone. Now, Barry, you did ask at some point in the last week or so whether Tarek Muraheramovic would be the first Premier League player with every vowel in his surname, and Stephen has been in touch with the following list: Maynor Figueroa, Talal El Kakori, Andranik Teimourian, Mathieu Louis-Jean, Omar El Abdelawi, Luciano Figueroa, and Christian Nagawi. I mean, I've heard of some of them. Christian Nagawi.
I think I've heard of one of them.
One appearance. Yeah. One of the Figueroas I've heard of. Christian Nagawi, one Premier League appearance for Man City, in which he became the first, and as of January 2019, the only player to be sent off on their one and only Premier League appearance. Well done, Christian. Thank you, Stephen. If we need a researcher, we will hire you. And less importantly, we obviously grew hugely in the States, our audience, during the World Cup. But now we get messages like this from Willem. Brother, is that really how you pronounce urinal? That's ridiculous, almost as bad as aluminium. Listen, you say... I once had a half-hour argument about the word tomato with a producer of Soccer AM, saying tomato. Anyway, I thought it was good. I don't have the time to tell you the joke, but now I've said it out loud, people will side with the producer. But trust me, I had a good gag and it wasn't allowed in. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you.
Cheers, Baz.
Thank you.
Good luck in your retirement home. Football Weekly is produced.
I might do find some like-minded individuals and do a sort of Richard Osman, We Solve Murders type.
That's a good idea. Or you could commit
my
murders
fellow
in it.
geriatrics.
Yeah, why not? Or there's some young blood in Greenacres. He's 53. Wow, you could be, last out of the dance floor, cabaret night and everything. Football Weekly is produced by Matt Bentley-Viney. Our executive producer is Joel Grove. Back on Thursday.